Hey there, let's talk rhythmic subdivision. This is an area that is crucially important to every musician, whether you play a percussive instrument or not. But for some reason, it gets overlooked, glossed over, and not paid attention to as much as I think it should. And it ought to, because when we're playing with other musicians or in the context of a groove, we need to know how many notes are we attempting to fit in the space that we're given. In the beginning of the video, I was playing an exercise where I try to maintain a rhythmic groove and then fill in some space with licks in the gaps, but also come back in on one without adding a strange measure of 5, an extra beat, something like that. Harder than it seems. So you can't get after that exercise unless you have a decent understanding and foundation of rhythmic subdivision. So here's a crash course if you're just getting started with this stuff, and then we'll also get into some more sophisticated rhythmic subdivisions where we're using odd note groupings. So the first one we're going to talk about is the simple quarter note. When dealing with rhythmic subdivision, what we're really talking about here is how are we dividing the beat? If a quarter note in 4/4 time, if it takes 4 of those to fill up a bar, we can divide them up any number of ways, but for right now, we're just going to think about that click or underlying pulse of the thing that we're playing over. I find it very helpful to attach syllables if you're just getting to explore this stuff. So you could think of maybe a name like a guitar player. So for quarter notes, we could think of Vi. So how's that? Vi. Against the quarter note click, it's going to sound like this. Very simple. Next up, we'll get a little bit more complex. We got to find another syllable. Who's it going to be? Ingve. How's that? So now we're we're subdividing that quarter note into 2 notes per click. Next one up, we're going to add 3. You see where this is going? Yes. Who's it going to be? Petrucci. All right. Petrucci. Kind of a stretch, but it's working. You see where I'm going with it. The idea is we need to learn to control these things, and although it's a simple concept, sometimes it's hard to find your place, and you may find that you have a little bit of a stutter or hesitation in your playing, especially when you're improvising. So I would encourage you to not only practice these things one at a time, but by mixing them up. Playing with authority, locking into that context, whether it's a metronome, a drummer, a song, very important. Next one up, we're now going to attempt to squeeze in 4 attacks to a single beat. This is called 16th notes. And we could think of Satriani. Pretty simple stuff here so far. If it feels over your head, don't worry about it. You start with what you can do and build off of that. So 4 notes to a single click. Now that we're starting to cram more notes in, we're going to probably need to slow down so that we can, again, practice with authority and also practice with relaxation. We don't want to tense up just because we're trying to go a little faster and squeeze in some crazy lickage. Next up, we've got a fun one because it's an odd number. It's going to be 5 notes to a single quarter note span, and we can think of Michelangelo for this one. Moving on from there, we're now back to a more even feeling, which is 16th note triplets, sextuplets as some may know them. We're going to be thinking Petrucci for this one, which may be harder to say than actually playing these things. So now 6 notes to a single attack. Next on the list, we've got 7 distinct attacks in the span of 1 quarter note. Inagata Davida? Okay, yeah. So getting a little weird now because we have Inagata Davida. If that If you could think that way, great, but a lot of people would have a hard time keeping that up while playing a guitar and thinking about rhythmic spacing. So at this point, we can also begin to just break things down into a couple of numbers instead of saying something ridiculous like Inagata Divida. So we could think of 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 or 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. Does that make sense? 1 2 1 2 1 2 I realize this is a lot to take on, a lot to practice, so we're just going to stop at 30-second notes today, which is going to be 8 distinct attacks in the span of a quarter note. For this one, we can think Satriani, Satriani. So now that we have laid a foundation for rhythmic subdivision, the next step is to apply these things one at a time and then mixing them up using a metronome, a groove, a bandmate. And then from there, it would be great to establish a rhythmic part. So just something simple and repetitive, and then give yourself a little space to insert one of those rhythmic elements. So again, simple riff, leave a space after one of them so that you can cram in some 16ths, 8ths, whatever it happens to be. And this is a great exercise for keeping you honest and teaching you how to flip back and forth without undershooting or overshooting your mark. So hopefully this is helpful. Stick with it. I know it can be frustrating learning this stuff, and if it doesn't seem sexy or exciting right off the bat, trust me, this stuff is going to change the way that you feel and play music, and definitely your bandmates are going to be grateful for the time spent developing this stuff. All right, so enjoy, have fun, and let me know if questions pop up. I'll see you all next week. Thanks.